So, courage. I wonder what you hear when you hear that word. For some, it conjures up images of Saving Private Ryan and battlefields and bears and bullets, and for others it's something different. It can be having a difficult conversation, it can be leaving a job, it can be a whole host of things. I'm not going to go too much into the detail, into the theory of courage. I'm really going to tell you a story or two, because I think stories are far more effective than knowledge. I think mostly we're inundated with knowledge, and stories speak to a different part of us. But what's interesting for me to notice is I've been having a really tough time of it, commercially, with my message of courage. Because people love it. They appear to, anyway. I have conversations with events organisers and HR people and CEOs. Wow, courage, fantastic. We really need a lot of it around here. We'll be in contact with you. We must get you along to talk, and then the phone doesn't ring. And so it's been a very interesting and challenging and frankly pretty lonely journey, really walking this path of courage, because we all know that it takes something to be courageous. What I define courage as is really doing anything outside of our comfort zone. And for me, I'll tell you a little bit about myself, but what you said was really important at the start of this conversation, Lisa. It's about connection. And I think as human beings, we are losing connection, but yet we're yearning for connection. And I once heard it said that mankind is vile. People are wonderful. And, if we look at the headlines of some of the stuff that's going on in the world, it's a really, really scary place. It can be a really, really scary place. But you know what? As we all sit around this table right now, we're just people, and we're just connecting, and we're just being with each other. And most of the time, our minds and our egos will tell us that it's a very, very scary world, and there's lots of evidence for it. But is it? And can it be different? And I believe that it can. And I believe that what it takes is a very ordinary courage, or an everyday courage. I'm not, part of, that was the champagne going. It was a bit
Don't worry, keep it. I'll set it up.
So what I'm realizing in my journey of courage is it's not about the stuff of battlefields and bullets and bears. That's in the realm of bravery. And please, by the way, at the end of this, do ask lots of questions, because I love that part, because that's the part that's really important to you. Really, the distinction between bravery and courage is that bravery generally I liken with the bees of battlefields, bears and bullets. It's the kind of thing that happens when a mother lifts her car to protect her small child. Where does that strength come from? It comes from something outside of ourselves, some uncommon sense of inner strength, but it's externally stimulated. And there are millions of stories. Hello and welcome. There are millions of stories of bravery. Courage, on the other hand, is something very quiet and very internal. So if you look at the word courage, it comes from the Latin cor, meaning heart, and age is movement. So it's movement or action from the heart. And you might have heard it said that integrity is what you do when no one's looking. And I think courage is what you do when no one's looking.
Or a restaurant full of crowded people.
Yes, well, they are looking, exactly. And so it's very personal. I come from a military background, or I had a state, 5.5 years I spent in the British Army, and I had a great uncle who won a Victoria Cross at the during the Indian Mutiny, as it was known in colonial times, or the first War of Indian Independence, as it was known on the other side of the fence. And he won a Victoria Cross. And for those of you who don't know, Victoria Cross is the highest medal of gallantry. And you really have to do something pretty brave to do it. And the irony, I think it's such an amazing story. So he covered a vast amount of ground under heavy machine gun fire to rescue a fallen comrade. He took a bullet to the leg, he damaged his shoulder, and went on and so on and so forth. And he died aged 72 when he fell 2 stairs down his steps in Bath as a bachelor. Now, I just put those 2 stories together and go, wow, I wonder, why was he a bachelor? How did that work out? And the assumption that I make is that there was probably a lack of courage, of vulnerable courage, to maybe ask someone out or to have a relationship with them. On the face of it, being in battle or being in terrible circumstances is almost a lot easier because we have to do something. It's fight or flight, survival or not. So courage, no one ever has to know that we were a little bit cowardly and we stepped over stuff. But when we act, everything changes. And even if it's a bad result. Have you ever noticed that?
Yeah.
Like your story, right? I'm sure, please, I hope you share it with us, but, Lynn here, has just given up or the last 6 months or so, has given up a really, on the face of it, I bet your mum, is your mum still alive? I bet your mum's had some opinions about that, right? Like a really great job, for doing her own thing. But it would have been a lot easier just to stay in the, stay in the mainstream and do what's expected of you. So my story, I'm just going to tell you how this whole strange journey of courage started, because I do feel very nervous about calling myself a teacher of courage, because if someone else called themselves a teacher of courage, I'd be like, okay, so what's your story? And I think that, ironically enough, the story is just a moment in time that I chose to operate and do something in a different way than I'd done before. So my story of courage started, conscious courage I should say, started one evening in London, in South London, a place called Brixton, which is anywhere with a name like Brixton has a little kind of history to it. It's one of the roughest, toughest parts of London, with all the associated behaviour that goes with it, from crime and violence and drugs and the works. And it was a Friday night in 1999, and I'd been on a course, I'd been working late, and I came up onto the Brixton main road, and I was greeted by this Friday night, frivolity. And I walked along the high street, and there was a queue for the bus that I wanted to catch, and so I joined the queue. And there was lots of conversation and lots of banter going on, and we all piled onto the bus, and as the bus pulled away, I couldn't put my finger on it, but something was happening, and I couldn't work it out. It was so obvious when I saw it. We all fell completely and utterly silent. Not a word. So all that banter, all that activity, nothing. And I was sat there, one of those same people who was very silent. Oh, I'm very silent. And I was in front of the bus, and I thought, why? Why have we just done this? Why do we always do this? And we've got a bunch of 7-year-olds in here, right? They'd be going crazy with energy and flying off the beams, and parents telling them to step down, but we're just sat there like this. And I thought, I got it in a moment. It's fear. It's a fear of just being ourselves. It's a fear of expressing ourselves. It's a fear of what will people think of us. Too loud, too quiet, too northern, too southern, a whole host of things. And then I had this idea. Why don't you get up and make a speech? As you do on a Friday night, sober, and not talking about religion. And and I'm an Englishman. I mean, I'm an adopted South African. My history was that I was born in England, in a small town south east of Birmingham called Leamington Spa. And my folks moved to Durban when I was 3 until the age of 10, and that was where the bug bit with South Africa. And then I went back to England and really finished off my schooling in England, joined the army, and then aged 30, around this time, I thought, wow, what about South Africa? I've got to be there. I just got to be there. I wanted to contribute. I thought it was a brilliant country, by the way. I mean, notice how safe we are in South Africa all of a sudden. I just went for 3 weeks to England, and people were like, whoa, South Africa, it's like, nothing's going on there. All right. Let's see. So I was in the process of coming back to South Africa, and I really wanted to contribute and make a difference. But I'm an Englishman, and I was brought up as a good Englishman, you know, and what we don't do is rock the boat. And we invade other people's countries, and we do quite successfully, and then, you know, and all the rest of it. But what we don't do is show any kind of vulnerability. You know, we just don't do that, right? Exactly, stiff upper lip. I went home just now, and there were 16 of us around the table. It was an amazing moment, actually. My dad, who's 86, my mum and dad have split up. My dad's 86, my mum's 76, and there was us, myself and my 2 brothers, our wives, and all our children, 16 people. Amazing. And it probably won't happen, unfortunately, until, you know, there's a funeral. Because funerals get people together, have you noticed? Interesting. And so, and the incident that my wife is a South African, and she kind of observes with rather a lot of interest, and she's a black South African, so she has a different cultural experience. She said to me afterwards, after we got back, she said, God, you know, your people, I mean, they're so nice. And they're so accommodating and so unself-expressed, and they don't say what there is to say. I said, come on, love, you know, don't be defensive, but that's human beings, right? I said, yeah, fine, that's human beings, but, you know, in my culture, in my experience, people, they give it a go, they say what there is to say, you know, and she said, I even noticed your mum, she said. We were at my older brother's place, and my older brother's wife had cooked the meal, and so she hadn't even sunk her fork and knife into the food, and she said, darling Joe, this is delicious. So that's who I am, you know, and so I'm on this bus, and I get this idea, like, wow, you know, make a speech. Why not? That'd be something unusual, that'd be something different. And then this other voice comes in, and it's the voice of my mother. Darling, don't even think about it. You know what I'm talking about. Exactly. Dead or alive, they're there with us, right? And it's not, it wasn't my mother, but it was just it was manifested as, and therefore my insecurities, my reasons not to do this thing, right? So my mum's going, in my head, don't even think about it, you'll only embarrass yourself. And then the clincher, what will people think? You know that one? That thing that is, I think, the greatest robber baron of them all, because they're going to think what they're going to think anyway, and we have no idea what they're going to think anyway. So I'm there going, and I now realise it was the difference between my heart was saying, give it a go, and my head was giving all the reasons why I shouldn't. And I've now started to listen much more to my heart. So there was this opportunity to now make this talk, and I was thinking, okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I really wanted to do it, and the bus was climbing out of Brixton. I had about a kilometre up the road, and the only way I could imagine myself standing up was to imagine I was jumping out of an aeroplane. I was trembling and shaking and sweating, and my heart pounding in my ears, thinking, I'm a lunatic. Like, I've joined the crowd. You know, there's people who get on the bus and they sing and ask for money. I'm now one of them. Like those people. And so I went 3, 2, 1, and I stood up and turned around, and I'm now at the front of the bus, and an entire bus full of people sitting down. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, good evening. It's very quiet in here, isn't it? My name's Simon, and I've been sat in my seat, wondering why we're all so quiet when we were having lots of lovely conversations before. And I think it's because we're scared. We're scared of just connecting and introducing ourselves to each other. And it went really well. People were like this. Not a change. Not a change. Like, just keep going. I didn't know what to say. But the thing that I learned is, actually, when we put ourselves in this space, we know what to say. It comes to us. Have you guys seen that TED talk by Elizabeth Gilbert? Please make a note of anything that comes up for you in this conversation. And she talks about. She was the woman who wrote Eat, Pray, Love. And I thought, that's just chicken stuff, man. It's not my thing. and then I heard this talk of hers, and I was like, wow. And then I went from that. I started reading the book. I thought, this is actually pretty great. But what she says is that, in the Greek and Roman times, the artists would just be the capsule or the vehicle for the spirit, for the, what do they call it? The
creation.
The creation, I've forgotten the name, but it's a Greek, and the Romans had a different name for it. I've drawn a blank on it. But the muse.
The muse,
yes. And then it comes, and sometimes it doesn't come, and that's okay. And I realise now that when I got up and I stood up on that bus, the muse was in operation. I didn't have a clue what to say. And then I heard this little voice in my head saying, just get Nelson Mandela's name in. Just get it in. It's great. It's not going well. Yeah. No one's responding. And I said, what's the difference? What's the difference between you, me, and Nelson Mandela? I said, we're made of the same stuff. But he had a commitment. And he never gave up on that commitment. And what so many of us do is we have a commitment to stuff, and it kind of gets a bit hard. And so we give up and we move on. So on our way into my car, it was all a bit of a blur, and then I saw my bus stop approaching, and I said, bus stop approaching, I'm going to have to wrap up now, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for your time, I really appreciate it. And then this bubble and this pop started to happen, and it transformed between myself moving from where I was to the exit into like a Saturday night comedy club. And I remember this little Glaswegian woman in the front row said, "Oh, that's fantastic, carry on, that's great, have you got it?" and there was another woman halfway up on the right from Joburg giving me a card saying, "Lekker man, keep going, we need you in South Africa, come on." And then this guy from Pakistan at the back, he said, "Excuse me, I've got a question." I was like, questions? Wow, I hadn't anticipated questions. He said, this is all very well, you do this in London, or Johannesburg or Cape Town, but I tell you what, you do this in Karachi. You get your throat cut. I'm like, noted. I must remember not to do this in Karachi. Anyway, so then it came for me to get out of the bus. And I looked at the far end of the bus and I froze. The far end of the bus was a very tall man standing there, and he summed up all of my fears and all of my prejudice. He was about 6'5", ginger shaven head. Normally meant he was a Celt. Always a bit worrying, Celts, in my view. And he had a donkey jacket on, and he had a couple of interesting redeeming features. One was a very deep scar down his right cheek, and the other was a tattoo across his neck. And as I got closer and I read what was written on the tattoo, it said in big capital letters, "Cut here," with a perforated line underneath it. And I walked towards this, and that was okay, not so bad, but the fact is he was staring right at me and very clearly in the path, and there was only one exit. And I walked towards the path and I thought to myself, Ekin, you're an idiot. Why? Why did you do this? Your little moment of whatever, self-expression, but now you're going to discover, that's just as we say in South Africa, cuck idea. Because this guy is going to make life very, very difficult for you. And all of these fears came in, and I thought, this is why I don't stretch myself, why I don't risk myself, because of all that I've been taught, is that if you really go out on a limb and you go into the realm of the undiscovered, it's gonna be bad. So just stick in your comfort zone. And I walked towards him just fully prepared for what might happen. And nowhere on my list of possibilities was what actually did happen. And I walked towards this guy, and I'll give you the edited version because language tends to have a bit of a flavour and an impact. But needless to say, I'll give a word that sounds like for the effect. And I walked towards him, and he stood very much in my path, and he was making a statement and not moving. And I got right up to him, and he came right into my face like this. And he put his finger about a centimetre away from my nose, and he said, I could smell the alcohol and the nicotine and the stale garlic on his breath. And his words changed my life. He said, mate, there's a lot of people who are going to think you're ducking mad. But whatever you do, never, ever stop what you're doing. All right, now go on then, duck off. So I did. And I got off the bus, and it was, I'm the son of a preacher man. My dad's a clergyman. I'm not a religious type, but it was a spiritual experience. It was a realization that I can be me. I can just be me with all my doubts and all my fears and all my insecurities, just the same as all of us around the table. And so I was hooked. And then I struggled and stuttered for about 10 years, doing occasional talks, trying to rekindle that experience. And then in 2011, as these things happen, a chance conversation with my wife. She said, she'd written a book in 100 days. And she said, what would you do in 100 days? I didn't hesitate for a moment. I said, I would do that thing. I would do that bus thing. And so I started doing the bus thing. And I started on the 1st of May 2011. I did 90, I don't know I came to 90, but anyway, I did 90 consecutive talks in 90 days.
On buses?
On buses, planes, trains, taxis, public spaces, and my personal favourite, changing rooms and gym saunas. but so interesting.
But no restraining orders or anything.
Not yet. But those kinds of questions, and like my Pakistani friend on the bus, you die of No, because here's what I discovered. And it is a bit mad, and it is a little bit off-centre, maybe, but I don't think it is. I think the way we operate in our lives in modern society is a little mad. Endless hours in front of our computer screens. Endless hours on our cell phones. Watching TV, not conversing, not connecting with each other. I'm kind of realised that I'm trying to rekindle an ancient thing, a primitive thing, a thing where we actually just express ourselves to each other. And I think the world needs it. And so that's kind of become my mission, is to foster and encourage connection with people. And it's a real mission because I don't really know where this is going. I don't really know how to do it. A lot of people will label me as a lunatic, but I think more will say, good on you, keep going. So I've done in excess of 1,000 talks now, and I'm really, my path has taken me to actually training people in self-expression, training people in telling our stories, because I think our stories are the real magic. And all of us around this table have the most extraordinary stories, but we don't think anyone's really that interested. And we think other people's stories are so much more interesting than ours. But actually, if we allow ourselves to engage and indulge in the telling of our own stories, I think it's a remarkable thing. Because I think if we can tell our stories and have the vulnerability and the courage to do that, then we can do lots of other really great things as well. So I'm about done on my time. How can I end off? I think some questions we've got. I love some questions, and particularly as they relate to your life. I really enjoy that. But just, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time out to do this, and just to really to be here and to connect with people, because that's where everything changes.
Thank you.
You're most welcome.
Thank you.